Okay, the time has come and I'm happy to share. I will be sharing a 8 to 10 week series on me fully renovating my first mobile home property.
Don't mind the mess. This was the bathroom. The drywall has to be replaced, insulation had to be replaced. There was a lot of rot and mold. Okay, so this looks crazy. The kitchen, everything looks so good. So the windows definitely makes a huge difference in here.
This has been a long time coming. I think just in the name of reflection, these past few years being a mom, I've learned so much. The funny thing about motherhood for me is I knew I always wanted to be a mother. I knew I always wanted children. I knew I always wanted a certain life for my children. I wanted to teach them certain things. And as somebody who was an entrepreneur before having kids, I just knew I was gonna set them up in a very particular way. And motherhood came at me very, very fast. And I realized that I actually didn't have the things set up that I had access to set up, as well as it made me take a hypercritical look at myself and ask myself, like, what am I doing with all of the abundance that I've achieved? And in doing that, and a lot of self-reflection, a lot of things that I thought I was gonna do before motherhood, I fell in love with the idea of creating beautiful spaces for people, whether that be short-term rentals, being a landlord, whether that's creating event spaces, whether it's creating a development project. And over the past 5 years, I have invested a lot of my time and my energy of learning the art of renovation and property investment. And I will be sharing some of that process with you guys for one of the properties. So this mobile home property was probably the most intense because one, I've never done a mobile home. Two, it needed a lot of TLC and we had to go down to the studs. I've never done an aggressive renovation like this. It was on a much smaller scope of work, smaller footprint. But I want to share the process with you guys. So in this series, you guys are going to have anywhere from like 10 to 18 videos that I will be rolling out over the course of the next like 8 to 10 weeks, just sharing the process with you. Because I think one thing amongst like YouTube University and kind of just being that person that I can kind of consider like I lived before social media, and then I also have been a recipient of the abundance that social media can bring. There were so many things on my list: real estate investment, property ownership, stocks, real estate, physical products, digital products, so many things that me as an entrepreneur, I dibbled and dabbled with and I played with and I made a lot of money with off of social media. And I think for me, like I just knew that I was going to eventually get to those things. So when I actually became a mom and I'm looking at a physical child and I'm like, what knowledge am I going to actually provide you with? What kind of stability am I going to provide you with? What kind of mindset am I going to provide you with? And what type of financial awareness am I going to provide you with? And it became a major theme for me because I don't take for granted the type of abundance that I'm surrounded by. And that I can live in on a daily basis. But I think for me, in doing that, there were so many things that I needed to change from a mental perspective to even align with the abundance that I had access to. And I think through having my own financial independence for several years before becoming a mother, before becoming a wife, I've kind of lived the best of both worlds. And I had to take an honest look at myself and say, you know, do I have the capacity to teach young men who I have birthed how to lead and how to spend and how to structure themselves? And the honest answer was no. I learned that I knew how to make a lot of money, but do I know how to move my money in a way where it can really impact my family for futures to come? And although this is just one investment property, I really, in the season of motherhood, have learned how you do one thing is how you do everything. And one thing I was not doing correctly was just moving my money in a way that thought about the future generations and also just the teaching aspect and the teaching component as well. So that's kind of where my heartstrings were pulled, and I've learned a lot over the years, and I'm still a student. I'm still learning. I have my own goals that I want to reach. I have the amount of doors that I want to reach, but I just thought it would be interesting to share, because I feel like one thing that I always go to when I'm looking to learn something is I go on YouTube. And I love taking in content that can be informational and deeply impacting from a how-to step-by-step perspective. So in this series, you guys are going to see me renovate an entire mobile home. This mobile home project was a labor of love and honestly an emotional project for me. The fact that I was able to do this was full circle moment for me. And I think throughout the process, there were so many times where I had to like sit with myself and be like, wow, there was once a time when I was watching like Extreme Makeover Home Edition. There was a time where I did have a little bit of money in my pocket and I was thinking about investing in things and I didn't. And I'm just grateful that I took the leap of faith, because I think for me, as somebody who's very extreme and likes to know everything, everybody who is successful always says like there's no way of learning until you're actually in it. And I know that also comes from a place of privilege and sacrifice, because when you do that, you have to account for either time or money spent or wasted. And not that it would ever be a waste, because it always transitions into a learning lesson that you can take on to the next project. But it honestly was a blessing to be able to be in a space to do it. And I'm grateful because I'm able to potentially do another project and do other projects and have multiple properties under the portfolio that I'm building. Another thing that I love about renovating spaces is you create spaces for people to create memories. And whenever I walk into these spaces, I think about the people that would stay there, whether it is a short-term rental, an event space, or a rental property. I think about the children that will be raised there, the parents that will be growing there, the person who moved out and got their first place all by themselves. I think about the person who's rebuilding there. I think about the people who are newly engaged or newly married, couple who is downsizing, or the elderly person that's coming in. So I really, really, really try to put myself in the shoes of the prospective person based off of the demographic or the property that I'm renovating and create a space for them. And I think that's just deeply reflective on like just the journey that I've gone through from childhood to now. I lived in a house with like 13 people. I saw my mom work very, 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 very hard and get us our first apartment and then get us our first home. And I just think about through all of the different spaces and phases that I went through as a child, my mom always created a space that felt like it was meant for me and created a place of peace that was for me through all of the different phases that we were in. So when I create spaces and I'm decorating or I'm renovating, the thought of creating pockets of peace for people to come home to that are fresh, that are new, that are safe. These places have mold. These places have walls that are caving in. I just think about the stress of the day and the person coming home and having something that they're proud to live in and they're grateful for. And I just think, like I said, of my childhood and just the evolution that I saw my mom go through as a woman who had me very young but worked very hard and upgraded our lifestyle, you know, all throughout my childhood. And when I walk in spaces that are within my budget, most of the time they're not in the most affluent neighborhood. And I think about myself. I think about my mom. I think about the young mother, especially because I'm a mother. And I look at my life as a mother and I'm just like, this is hard. Like, being a mom is hard. And I have access to all of these things, opportunity, assistance, help, and support. And it's still hard. So I look at my mom and I'm like, how did you do it? And you did it alone. So when I walk into spaces that I'm thinking about renovating or thinking about investing in, I can't help but to think about my mom. And I can't help but to think about myself, and I can't help but to think about who I am today versus where I grew up and what I came from. It makes me so excited to transform a space, thinking that a little girl like me and a young mother like my mom might be moving into that space. They might be in a space where they just got their license. Speaking to my mom's point of view, like she was a CNA, she was an LVN, she was an RN, an administrator. She worked her way up a ladder and I watched her do it. I go in and I walk through these spaces and I think like there might be a mom who's working X amount of hours and there's a little boy or a little girl who is just watching their mom elevate. And to think that I could create a space that is safe, that is theirs, that's clean, that's beautiful, that's unique, that's warm, that's inviting for that mother and that little me while they're in that current season of their life, like it gives me so much joy. And I think about all the other perspectives too, like I mentioned earlier of, the family, the person starting over, the engaged people, the people who are downside. I think of all of them, but my initial thought is myself and my mom. And I just think, you can come from a place where you might not have the best examples around you. You might not be in the best neighborhood, but let's be real. Sometimes that's where the brightest minds come from. There's such a harmony in who I was and where I started and where I am today. And then also teaching my children deep compassion and awareness for all of those things and being grateful for what I have, but also knowing where I came from. So when I'm doing these spaces, I just feel like it's such an inner child connection that I'm fulfilling. And then it's also a intentional investment where my children can inherit. So this series is very near and dear to my heart. I feel like in the season of motherhood and parenthood, like your mind just shifts so much and you think about things and your goals and your dreams and how you spend money and how you don't spend money and the things that you're purchasing, the things that you're retaining, the things that you're digesting, the people you're around, and you just take a full 360, like the way I've been living is or is not the way that I need to be. A deeply reflective space for me to be in. And I really think of reimagining a space as reimagining self. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that come in it. There's a lot of discipline that comes in it. And I just think the environment that you create sets the tone of who you want to be and how you show up for yourself. And if there's somebody that's on the other side of this camera, they're not proud of the space that you're in. There were so many spaces that I was in before I got to this point where I had ownership of how I wanted to live and the places that I could live in. I hope that this serves as encouragement for you that your current space does not have to be your final space. And maybe this is way too metaphorical, but I just think through my childhood, my adulthood, and then even the lifestyle that I live now where we're constantly moving, there's nothing like home. There's nothing like your bed. There's nothing like your peace. There's nothing like your space. And the fact that I'm able to create these spaces for others while making money, while leaving something behind to my children, I feel like it's an equal area of opportunity for growth for everyone. So I'm super excited. This project, like I said, was so messy. It was the first project that I did that I was really, really, really remote. I did it more so on a budget than some of my other properties. And it's a mobile home. It's just something I've never done before. So it was a lot of fun. And I'm so excited to roll it out and share it with you guys. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in and stay tuned for next week for the first episode of renovating my first mobile home on a budget.